سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد فهذا الصلاة على سيدي ومولاي رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ومن كل عمل صالح. This night of Jumu'ah, it's a blessed night. There's a lot of barakah in this night, and the sunnah is to increase your salah upon the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام in every good deed. يروي الإمام البخاري في صحيحه عن أنس رضي الله عنه قال. The hadith tonight in collection Imam Bukhari narrated to us by Anas, and this is a long hadith. I'm going to take a piece of it for you because I don't want to take too much time. And in the topic is still endowment. I'll just tonight, and this is the final hadith actually. This is the final hadith of that I'm talking about, waqf, and then we'll move on to something different. I forgot it was the last one, so I'll end it kind of with this one because I find this hadith, inshallah, have the last piece. And what Anas radiallahu anhu here says, and it's a beautiful hadith, wallah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's a long one. I'll just kind of take the piece. قال وكان النبي. He basically tells the story of the Prophet عليه coming from Mecca to Medina and kind of what happened, like the whole. He summarizes it in his own words, and it's a beautiful summary. I'm just take the piece that I like. قال وكان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يحب أن يصلي حيث أدركته الصلاة ويصلي في مرابض الغنم. And the Prophet ﷺ would like, whenever he was traveling, whenever it was time for salah, wherever he was, to pray. He didn't like the idea, okay, let's get over there first, or let's go to this place. It was just his preference, ﷺ, that whenever hadarat as-salah, all right, wherever we are, as long as it's tahir, he would pray, ﷺ. Even in marabid al-ghanam. Marabid al-ghanam is where the sheep would move. And the sheep, as most madhahib see it, that whatever the sheep comes out of the sheep is tahir. So it was tahir, it was not like, it's not the... it's not perfume, but it's tahir. So he would pray, he wasn't picky alayhi salatu wasalam with where he prayed. Like it didn't have to be perfect where he was. As long as it was tahir, he would pray alayhi salatu wasalam. But ثُمَّ أَمَرَ بِبِنَاءِ الْمَسْجِدِ. And then he commanded people, and this is just summarizing this story of him coming to the Medina. And then he commanded to build the masjid. فَقَالَ لِمَلَئٍ مِّن بَنِي النَّجَّارِ يَا بَنِي النَّجَّارِ ثَامِنُونِي بِحَائِطِكُمْ هَذَا. And then he called upon a family that belonged to Banu Najjar. Now they're an important group of the Khazraj because the Prophet ﷺ's grandfather's mother came from them. So Abdul Muttalib's mother was from Banu Najjar. So he had a relation, like a blood relations to them. So he stayed with them, and that's where Abu Ayyub comes from. And he used to be, he had some connection to them, so he'd be able to talk to them a little bit more openly. So he chose to build the masjid within their territory because he thought he'd have a little bit more leeway and leverage. So he asked them, ثَامِنُونِي بِحَائِطِكُمْ هَذَا. Give me, I want to buy from you this ha'it. The word ha'it in modern Arabic is a wall. In more traditional Arabic, it's a piece of land that is closed down by a wall. So it's a land that you can identify where it begins and where it ends. It's called a ha'it, right? فَقَالُوا لَا وَاللَّهِ لَا نَطْلُبُ ثَمَنَهُ إِلَّا إِلَى اللَّهِ. They said, we swear, no, we refuse by Allah. We only ask its thaman from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was, as far as I know, the first waqf made for a masjid. As far as I know. Now, you could argue that there was a waqf that was made before it, that's not a masjid, but was made for da'wah, and that you could argue Dar al-Arqam comes before. You could argue that, and I would beat you in the argument because it really wasn't, because he held his house. He kept his house. He never actually, he used it, but he never made it a full waqf. But regardless, you could make that argument. But as far as what we can certainly point out as the first waqf that we have in our ummah for a masjid was Banu Najjar, and we don't even have the name of the person who did this. Like we don't even have the exact name, we just know that it's a family, that they donated that piece of land fi sabilillah. Imagine this group of people, wallahi. Think about it for a second. The first part of the Prophet ﷺ's masjid. Think about it now. Think about it now when you go to the Hujra al-Sharif or Rawda al-Sharif, when you go there. Think about, that's what Banu Najjar offered. Think about how, Ya Latif, Ya Satir. I can't even begin to quantify or imagine what this family got from this act of waqf. Waqf is, you're playing some degree of risk with it, right? And it's a roulette wheel, but it only wins. It's a roulette wheel that only wins. It just depends on how much you win, that's all. But you're going to win. You're going to win a lot. It just depends on how much. These guys hit the absolute jackpot. when they offered their ha'it fi sabilillah. They didn't take money. Imagine they took money for it. Some books in the seerah point out that some of them, they suggest that maybe some of that family took money for it. But Bukhari, Imam Bukhari in his narration, which is I think is more authentic than the books of seerah, point out that they said, لا نطلب ثمنه إلا إلى الله. We only want it for the award from Allah. We offer it to the Muslimin. Imagine how much they got for this little piece of land and what it turned into later. يقول فكان فيه, and this is the point of the hadith. I'll finish the piece of the hadith if you don't mind for you, but that was like the point I wanted to make. قال فكان فيه ما أقول لكم قبور المشركين وفيه خريب وفيه نخل فأمر النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم بقبور المشركين فنبشت وأمر بالخريب فسويت وأمر بالنخل فقطع ثم صفوا النخل قبلة المسجد وجعلوا عضادتيه الحجارة وجعلوا ينقلون الصخرة وهم يرتجزون والنبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم معهم. Subhanallah. I was 10 years old when I read this hadith once back to one of my teachers. And I read it back to him and I said, وَجَعَلُوا يَنْقُلُونَ الصَّخْرَ وَهُمْ يَرْتَجِزُونَ وَهُوَ يَقُولُ اللهم اغفر اللهم لا خير إلا خير الآخرة فاغفر للأنصار والمهاجرة. So the Shaykh told me, you missed the most important part of the hadith. It was a long hadith, I read it, the whole thing, I was very proud. You missed the most important part of the hadith. And I said, I didn't miss anything. I got it exactly the way it was. I know you missed the most important words. Like your whole thing is useless, you missed the most important words. So I went back to see what I missed in the hadith. And what I missed was the piece where he says, وَجَعَلُوا يَنْقُلُونَ الصَّخْرَ, and they were carrying the rocks on their backs. وَهُمْ يَرْتَجِزُونَ, and they were singing as they did it. And then I missed the piece, وَالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم معهم. I didn't say that piece. I just said, he said, you missed the most important piece. You wasted your time memorizing all this and you forgot to say, والنبي معهم. What value was it for anything they were doing if he wasn't with them, عليه الصلاة والسلام? What value for a bunch of people carrying rocks and singing is there if Rasulullah was not with them? وَالنَّبِيُّ مَعَهُمْ. He was with them. That's why this is all important. That's why this has value to it. That's why this place has value. That's why we are here. Because Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam is our teacher. He is our role model. We take from him alayhi salatu wasalam. If it wasn't for him, then none of this would be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose him. He made him our role model. So we're here. Never forget that. وَالنَّبِيُّ مَعَهُمْ وَهُوَ يَقول, and he was saying, اللهم لا خير إلا خير الآخرة. Allah, there is no khair except the khair that exists in akhirah. فَاغْفِرْ لِلْأَنصَارِ وَالْمُهَاجِرَةِ. So show your forgiveness, offer forgiveness to the Ansar and for the Muhajirin. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ajma'in. And he just kind of describes how there were old graves, old graves, like there's nothing left in it. So they took out the graves, and there was like pieces of land that was not level. So he leveled the land, and they cut the trees, the nakhl, and they put the nakhl in front of the masjid, and they covered with it. And then they took rocks, and they made the two beams inside the masjid, and then they were carrying the rocks. Allahu Akbar. Imagine this. I want you to imagine this image. Just take this image for a second. And see them walking, carrying the hijara, putting them in and building the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, and they're singing, and he's there, alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma la khayra illa khayru al-akhirah, faghfir lil-ansari wal-muhajira. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the first waqf that ever existed. In the first waqf that we've ever had as Muslims in our ummah. And I wanted to end it with the first waqf ever as a reminder for all of us, inshallah. يروي الإمام البخاري في صحيحه عن أنس قال وكان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يحب أن يصلي حيث أدركته الصلاة ويصلي في مرابض غنم ثم أمر ببناء المسجد فقال لملئ من بني النجار يا بني النجار ثامنوني بحائطكم هذا فقالوا لا والله لا نطلب ثمنه إلا إلى الله وكان فيه ما أقول لكم قبور المشركين وفيه خرب وفيه نخل فآمر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم بقبور المشركين فنبشت وبالخرب فسويت وبالنخل فقطع ثم جعلوا النخل قبلة المسجد وجعلوا عضادتيه الحجارة وجعلوا ينقلون الصخر وهم يرتجزون والنبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم معهم وهو يقول اللهم لا خير إلا خير الآخرة فاغفر للأنصار والمهاجرة. صدق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم. إن شاء الله جمعة tomorrow is 3:30. We'll see you then.